Okay, so we're looking at the Pearson BTEC Level 3 National Extended Diploma in Business, and this is from First Teaching September 2016. We're now looking at Part 3 of Learning Game D2, so Elasticity, Price Elasticity of Demand. Now, whether consumers will pay a certain price is what economists call elasticity of demand. Imagine, for example, the government bans broccoli. What would happen if the government banned broccoli, a vegetable? Would the people decide to start creating or growing vegetables in their back gardens illegally and take that risk? Or would consumers just switch to cauliflower or cabbage or a different type of vegetable? Um, Demand is said to be elastic for broccoli. Therefore, consumers would most likely just switch to a different product or a similar product or a substitute good. If demand for broccoli was inelastic, then consumers would illegally produce or grow broccoli. Okay, but we'll learn about what those words inelastic and elastic mean in this PowerPoint in this lesson. Alcohol is actually inelastic. Okay, that means that no matter how much the price increases, people will still buy alcohol. Basically, why? Because some people deem it as a necessity, or some people deem it as something that they can't go without. Some people are addicted to alcohol. So no matter how much prices rise or increase, people still purchase it. Now, did you know that roughly 100 years ago, in 1919, in America, they actually banned alcohol? Yes, so that's quite interesting. That's something you can Google, have a quick read into. But they actually banned alcohol. Now, what that led on to were people were producing alcohol in secret, basically. But they were producing it in such unhygienic ways. It was actually causing people to get diseases, and it was causing death. And there were so many protests that consumers or the government, sorry, had to cease its alcohol ban, basically, and made it legal again. So again, that's something for you to read up on. I found that quite interesting. Now, if price increased by 30% for the below items or services, would people still buy it? Okay, so just maybe pause the video, have a quick think about that. Alright, you should have had a quick thought about that. It's just a quick start activity for you guys to just think and just ponder over. So Kit Kat bars. Would people still buy it? Probably not. People will probably resort to buying other types of chocolate like Snickers or Mars or Twirl or anything else. Petrol, if the price increased by 30%, would people still buy it? Probably yes, because people aren't going to just up and sell their cars or just opt for using public transport. Some places aren't as easy as to get to without the use of a car, so people will probably still pay for that increased price in petrol. What about milk? Yes, people will probably still pay for milk if the price increased by 30%, as it's seen as a necessity good, a good which is needed. Okay, milk as a whole. Milk as a whole. Okay, what about the latest iPhone? You could argue that people won't buy this and will probably switch over to Samsung or a different smartphone. However, some people will still buy the latest iPhone due to brand loyalty. Okay, and what about internet? If the price increased for internet use, would people still pay for it? Would they switch over providers? It's a lengthy process, isn't it? You'd have to maybe get an engineer to come and stop the internet from working, sort of thing, depending on what provider you're with. And then you would have to make loads of phone calls to research another internet service provider and get that engineer to come and fix in your hub. So it could be a long process. It depends on the individual, I guess. So we're looking at price elasticity of demand. The definition of price elasticity of demand is: price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of demand for a product after a change in its price. Okay, so to put it simply, we're looking at how demand for a product changes once there is a change in that product's price. Okay, now the formula for PED, or price elasticity of demand, is, it's here. Okay, it's a percentage change in the quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Okay, now you won't really need this as much in your coursework. I mean, just if you want to state it, that's fine. That's more than enough. But you don't have to put in any figures or anything like that. Okay. Now there is an inverse relationship between price and demand, which simply means, or basically means, that as price goes up for a product or service, demand for that product or service goes down, and as price goes down or is decreased, demand for that product or service increases. Okay, this is like a logic thing, or just something natural. Okay, when price of a good increases, we tend to not demand it as much. Okay, but the question is, by how much? Is the change in demand more than proportional to the change in price, or less than proportional? This is what we're trying to pardon me, this is what we're trying to figure out. Now, we've got two main types of demand when it comes to price elasticity of demand. Okay, we've got elastic demand and inelastic demand. On this slide, we're going to look at elastic demand. A product is said to have an elastic demand if the percentage change in demand is greater than the percentage change in price, or if demand is sensitive to price changes. Again, I've got here figures greater than 1, but that you don't really need to know that. That's more for maybe if you're studying economics, or if you go into university, sort of thing. But we don't need to know that information for our coursework. But we do need to know what I've just read over. Okay, so those two sentences under elastic demand. And I've tried to give you a visual example here. So you can see it visually as well. So if price of a product or service increases by 10% and demand falls drastically by 30%, the PED is price elastic, as the percentage change in demand is greater than the percentage change in price. And you can visually see it. Okay, there's a 10% increase in price, but there is a 30% decrease in demand. Okay, so therefore price is elastic. So demand brings that price change brings about a more than equal to change in demand. Okay, so demand falls more, or demand changes more than the change in price. Now we've got inelastic demand. A product is said to have inelastic demand if the percentage change in demand is less than the percentage change in price. Demand is not sensitive to price changes. So if price changes, demand won't change as much. Okay, people will still continue to buy the product or service. Remember that example of alcohol? If price increases for alcohol, demand isn't going to change as much. Why? Because people are addicted to alcohol. People need alcohol. Some people can't do without it. Okay, and again, figures between 0 and 1. But again, you don't really need to know that. Now again, there's another visual example here. If the price of a product or service increases by 10%, demand only falls by 5%. Okay, so there's a smaller change in demand than there is in price, which means that PED is price inelastic, as the percentage change in demand is less than the percentage change in price. Okay, now we've got an example here. We've got one example here of Uber. So Uber operates a surge pricing policy. During peak times, Uber can increase the price of a normal fare. During peak times, people need to get home and therefore are prepared to pay a higher price. Therefore, in peak times, Uber becomes inelastic. Okay, people need it. People need to get home. They want to get home quickly. People are prepared to pay a higher price. These may be people finishing work, or just caught in the rush hour and they need to get from A to B. Okay, so the price of Uber becomes inelastic for people. Or the demand. However, during non-peak times, if a customer saw such high prices on the Uber app, they may think again or may have more time to research a different taxi firm or choose a different mode of transport. They might decide, you know what, let me just walk to the closest train station, or let me take the bus there because I've got plenty of time. Therefore, Uber becomes price elastic. Okay, a change in price will bring about a more than proportional change in demand. Okay. Now, I've got an activity here for you. So for the below scenarios, you need to explain whether you think they have elastic or inelastic demand and why. Okay, so just state whether you think they have inelastic or elastic demand and then try to explain it. So you've got 5 examples here. So if Manchester United increased the price of their tickets, would that lead? Is that an example of elastic or inelastic demand and why? If Evian, the water bottle company, increased the price of their water bottles, what would that lead on to? If the price of cigarettes increased, what is that an example of elastic or inelastic demand? If the price of petrol increased by 10% and demand fell by 5%, what is that an example of? If the price of Kit Kat bars increased by 10% and demand fell by 30%, again, what is that an example of? Okay, so just pause the video, write down your answers, have a think about it. Okay, so you should have had a thought about that now, and you should have written down your answers. I'm going to show you some of the answers. Okay, so if Manchester United increased the price of their tickets, that's an example of inelastic demand. Okay, because their supporters are, you could say, brand loyal. Okay, these are people that they must support their team. Some people have to buy these football tickets. Okay. If Evian increased the price of their water bottles, well, this is elastic because some people will just switch over to Volvic, and again, this isn't it's really as simple as that. Okay. If the price of cigarettes increased, inelastic because again people are addicted. Okay, people are addicted to cigarettes, so no matter the price of cigarettes, people must have their smoke. So it's inelastic. And demand won't change as much as the price change. Okay. Number 4, if the price of petrol increased by 10% and demand fell by 5%, well, this is a clear example of inelastic demand for petrol. Okay. And if the price of Kit Kat bars increased by 10% and demand fell by 30%, this is a prime example of elastic demand. Okay, demand has changed more than how much the price has changed by. Okay, so demand is elastic. Now, the impact on revenue. Businesses ultimately wish to increase their profit and so wish to understand what will happen to demand if they increase or decrease their prices. Now, it depends on whether the product or service the business is offering is elastic or inelastic. And we've got a little table here, and how to read this table is you've got what will happen if you raise selling prices for price elastic demand or elastic goods, and what will happen if you raise the selling price for inelastic goods. What will happen if you lower the selling price for elastic goods, and what will happen if you lower the selling price for inelastic goods? So let's look at the first one. If we raised the selling price of elastic goods, sales revenue will decrease. Okay, so the amount of income generated from these sales will decrease. Okay, because remember, you increase the price of an elastic good, and demand will decrease by a more than proportionate equivalent. Okay, now if you raise the selling price of inelastic goods, your sales revenue will increase. Okay, so it makes sense to increase the selling price of inelastic goods. If you lower the selling price of elastic goods, your sales revenue will increase. Okay, if you lower the selling price by 5%, for example, of whatever the elastic good is, um, so again, if you lower the selling price of elastic good of the elastic good by 5%, demand should increase by more than 5%. Okay, so therefore it makes sense to lower the selling price of elastic goods. If you lower the selling price of inelastic goods, sales revenue will decrease. Okay, uh, the amount that consumers demand for it won't change by that much. Okay, and you actually lose sales or lose profit. So it doesn't make sense to lower the selling price of inelastic goods. It makes sense to increase the price of inelastic goods. And a little reminder here: sales revenue is the income generated from sales. Okay, it's the income generated from sales. So it's not profit. It's just the money you make from your sales. Now, we've got some factors which influence PED or price elasticity of demand. These are the availability of substitutes. So, the more substitutes there are in the market, the more easy it is for people to switch over when price increases. The less substitute goods, there are, the less easy it is for people to switch over when price increases. And we've got some examples here, okay? If the price of Coke goes up, Coca-Cola, people may switch to Pepsi. Okay? If the price of your current gym goes up, you may switch to a cheaper local gym. And the same can be said for Colgate and Aquafresh toothpastes. If the price of one of those goes up, you'd just switch and buy a different toothpaste, wouldn't you? If the price of goods in Asda increased, you'd probably switch over to Sainsbury's or Tesco's. Okay? Time is a factor. The more you need the good or service, the more inelastic it becomes. So the more you need it, the quicker you need it. If you need the item ASAP, the more inelastic that item becomes. Okay, so for example, buying a bottle of water at a service station. So you're on the motorway, you need a bottle of water. You stop at the closest service station. You're gonna buy that bottle of water no matter how much it costs, right? And it's probably going to be more expensive than how much it would cost in your local supermarket. Or driving your car on the motorway and needing to refill your car with petrol. If you realize, hang on, my petrol is running low, I need to refill my car. You're going to go to the closest service station, closest petrol station, and you're going to refill your car no matter how much the price of petrol is. Again, if you've got a boiler leak and you need to repair your boiler ASAP, price becomes inelastic. Okay, no matter how much that boiler repair person quotes you, you're more than likely just going to go with it. You might make a couple of phone calls, but you probably won't have time to sit around and really research the cheapest option or read up on it. You'll probably just go onto Google, type in boiler repair in your local area, call up the first two numbers probably, or the first number, and just get them to come down ASAP. Okay, so branding affects price elasticity of demand. Businesses spend time and money building up their brand image. By creating brand loyalty, firms know that their customers will be willing to pay more for the product, and they can therefore raise prices as the PED is inelastic. And if you go back to that graph, remember, if you raise prices for inelastic goods, you increase your sales revenue. So for example, if this year the price of Apple iPhones are 20% more expensive than Samsung's latest smartphone release, consumers who are brand loyal to Apple may still buy the latest iPhone. Okay, it may not make sense in terms of pricing, but it makes sense in terms of brands. Okay, some people they only want to buy Apple brands. So that's a prime example. Income. If consumers' incomes are high relative to the product or the price of the product, then the issue of price becomes less of a factor and the product becomes more inelastic, making it easier for firms to increase prices to raise revenue. An example is a CEO experiencing a 10% increase in a can of Coke. They're less likely to even notice this effect of a price increase. Okay, so if people's incomes are high and the proportion of the person's total income for that good is low, then it's not really going to affect them. Okay, but if the price of that product is equivalent or represents a higher proportion of income of that person, then it's going to be more elastic. Okay, people are going to think twice and say to themselves, "Well, this is actually costing a lot. My income is, I don't know, um, we could say my income is, £1,000 a month, and the rent for this property is £900 a month. So I'm probably going to look for a cheaper place, because otherwise I'm just going to be left with £100 for the month, isn't it? Okay. Now, nature of the good or service. Demand for luxury goods is elastic. Okay, so that's just something for you to know. But luxury goods are elastic, and demand for necessity goods is inelastic. Okay, so if price increases for luxury goods, demand is going to decrease by a lot more than the price increase. And if demand for necessity goods is inelastic, that means that if the price increases by, let's say, 10% for milk or bread, and there's going to be a 5% decrease in terms of demand for milk and bread. Okay. An example is if the price of a sports car or holiday increases significantly, people can make do without it. Okay, they'll say to themselves, "I don't need this sports car, I don't need this holiday, make do without it." But if the price of milk or bread increases, these are necessities and people will have to pay for these items still. Okay, people need their bread and milk. The cost of switching is a factor which influences PED. Okay, so the cost of switching may affect whether demand for that good or service is elastic or inelastic. Some companies charge to make a switch or cancel a policy. And we've got some examples down here. Okay, so a 12-month mobile phone contract may ask for a small fee when switching providers, or if you cancel that phone contract, they may say, well, you have to pay for the remaining months, or you may have to pay for 1 month, or however, whatever's written in their policy. The same can be said for car insurance providers. Normally, car insurance providers will say, well, you have to pay a certain amount to cancel your policy, and this will get people thinking, is it worth it now? Is the cancellation fee worth actually cancelling or switching providers? Maybe it may be worth just staying with the company for the end of the contract. Okay, and in these cases, demand is inelastic. Okay. Now, evaluating PED. It is difficult to collate or collect accurate information or data, and the data used for price elasticity of demand for goods or services is usually based on estimated data. Okay, price elasticity of demand may change from different regions, countries, areas, or even in different times of an economic cycle. So during a boom or during a recession. Okay, or during the nature of that recession. So currently, nobody would have guessed that Amazon would have thrived during this recession that we're currently in. But Amazon has made a good some good profit during these times during lockdown, because people are at home and people can't go out to purchase items, so they're buying items online and they're buying items on Amazon basically. Consumer tastes and fashion is constantly changing. Okay, so what is in now might not be in the next 5 to 10 years, or even in the next month. Okay, when I was younger, baggy jeans was the thing, or baggy trousers. Nowadays, people are wearing tight jeans or tight trousers. Okay, so it's all about changing styles and fashion. Competitors continuously entering the market, or changing prices, or releasing new products, or even promoting their products will affect price elasticity of demand. Okay, so we can't assume that competitors are standing still or aren't really making any moves. Okay. Now, your task for today is to define what is meant by price elasticity of demand, explain the difference between elastic and inelastic demand, and apply to your business and identify whether your business has elastic or inelastic demand. It may be the case that certain items or services within your business are elastic and some are inelastic. If that's the case, just discuss those and just highlight those differences. And lastly, explain the factors which influence the price elasticity of demand of your business. Okay, so it might not be all of them, but pick and choose a few of them and explain them. Okay, all right, thanks, bye.